This past week, I did something I've been anticipating and eagerly expecting for years. I watched The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey. I've watched it in HFR, which is high frame rates, more on that later, and in 3D, more on that later too. Here's my review of the movie. The first part will be spoiler-free, and the second part will be a massive summary of the entire movie. You've probably heard all the hullabaloo about a brand new technology employed in the Hobbit movie called HFR, or high frame rates. Here's a quick explanation if you don't know what it means. Every movie ever made has been filmed at 24 frames per second. Unfortunately, this standard, which was set back in the early 1900s, performs quite poorly in action scenes or when the camera pans, as everything you see on the screen becomes a bit blurry. The Hobbit is the first film to be shot at 48 frames per second, double the old standard. This greatly enhances the viewing quality and clarity, most especially evident in scenes where many characters are moving at the same time, or when the camera pans over large landscapes. As you probably already know, those two cases are used quite often in Middle-earth movies, and therefore HFR is a huge bonus to your Middle-earth experience. I saw the movie last night in HFR 3D, and it was a fantastic experience. It took 15 to 20 minutes to get used to the new frame rate, but by the end, I was wishing that every movie was filmed at HFR. It's definitely the future and the present. Peter Jackson's famous panoramic shots of Middle Zealand look incredible in 48 frames per second. The HFR also greatly improves the clarity in action sequences. Even when thousands of goblins and dwarves were fighting in a massive battle, with the camera panning around the entire time, every detail was still clearly visible. Some critics have commented that this clarity is actually a negative because it makes every detail, every stitch, and every smudge on the sets, costumes, and makeup stand out. However, such careful attention was put into every detail in the production level, that it just helps you appreciate the entire movie all the more. I would most definitely recommend that you watch this movie in HFR at least once, if not twice, or more. The 3D was great too. Unlike some movies which exploit 3D technology by constant gimmicks, such as throwing stuff in your face, the 3D here acted more as an aid to the storytelling. More often than not, I didn't even notice the 3D because it actually looked so real. It truly felt like I was right there with the characters. There were maybe 5 or 6 places where the 3D was in your face, but these I felt were used quite effectively and didn't come out as cheesy. Overall, I thought that the balance of the 3D was great. Again, I'd recommend that you watch it in 3D, preferably with HFR as well. It's also worth noting that I didn't experience any motion sickness or any form of nausea from watching the movie in HFR 3D. Some people have physical problems watching 3D movies. This is because of the strobing effect that the 3D causes. However, HFR actually fixes this problem by greatly reducing the eye strain caused by strobing. If you're going to watch this movie in 3D, you really should watch it in HFR as well. Alright, here's a quick spoiler-free review. All I'll tell you is that as soon as I got home from watching this movie at about 3 in the morning, I booked tickets for a second viewing in IMAX 3D. It was that good. Watch it. Like, don't continue reading or watching this review. You're seriously missing out if you haven't watched the movie yet. I personally found The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey to be better than The Fellowship of the Ring, and possibly even better than The Two Towers as well. Of course, it couldn't quite beat The Return of the King, but at the rate this trilogy is going, I wouldn't be at all surprised if The Hobbit, There and Back Again, the third movie in the Hobbit trilogy expected to come out in summer of 2014, ends up topping Return of the King. Alright, now here's the spoiler full review. If you haven't watched the movie yet, go watch it, then come back here, okay? Alright, where do I begin? This movie was incredible. It was everything that I'd expected it to be, and still more. Unlike many critics, I didn't find the beginning of the movie boring. How could you call Thorin's flashback, the blunt the knife sequence, and the unexpected party boring? I feel as if the critics and I watched two entirely different movies. From here on out, I will ignore the critics and give you only my impression of the movie. In terms of faithfulness to the book, I would say that the movie was roughly 80% faithful to the book in terms of exact sequences of events. However, I think it was 100% faithful to the book in terms of the book's spirit. Both book purists and normal fans will be able to enjoy this movie alike. The visuals in this movie were absolutely incredible. The scenes of Erebor in the old Bilbo's prologue were breathtaking. Thror's throne room cannot be described with words. The dwarf mines, the Arkenstone, Goblin Town, the trolls, the wargs, New Zealand, Smaug, all of these were fantastic. The computer-generated characters looked better than ever. Gollum deserves an entire section for his own. He was spectacular in HFR 3D. He truly looked real, both in visuals and actions. Seriously, Andy Serkis deserves an Oscar nomination, at least, for his portrayal of Gollum. The riddles in the dark sequence is probably my favorite part of the entire movie. That entire sequence was virtually identical to the brilliant chapter in the book it was named after. The action in the movie. To repeat what I said earlier, this was most definitely not a boring movie. There was at least one action sequence every 30 or so minutes. I truly love how they gave each of the dwarves his own unique fighting style. Take the escape from Goblin Town, for instance. Owen stood in the center of a crossroad and spun his metal staff around and around above his head, knocking away all the goblins rushing at him from all sides. Balin, the old guy with the big white beard, has some sweet moves for an old guy. Watch him twirl his swords with great dexterity, while at the same time spinning to attack enemies behind him. Dwalin, the bald guy, is a master of the axe. He brushes aside goblins and wargs like flies. Cute little Ori goes around shooting things with his slingshot. It's not really that effective, but it shows that he has a heart of gold underneath his timid exterior. Then there's Thorin Oakenshield. Although he originally doesn't want to use the sword Orcrist, Goblin Cleaver, because it was forged by elves, he starts seeing its value and lethality when the Goblin King and his hordes cower in fear of it, calling it Biter. After this, Thorin wields Orcrist with a cold fury that nothing can stand against. It's worth noting that Thorin is able to use Orcrist quite easily, despite the fact that it was made for an elf king, much taller than any dwarf. That's quite a testament to his skill as a warrior. A quick little aside, Orcrist is, without a doubt, the most beautiful sword I've ever seen. I would love a replica. Smaug's attack on Erebor and Dale turned out much better than I'd ever imagined it in my head while reading the book. We caught only fleeting glimpses of the massive dragon himself, but what we saw was certainly enough to terrify us. It was quite obvious that not even the rough and tough dwarf army had any chance against him. If I have one complaint about the sequence, it was that the fire kind of looked fake. However, the destruction of the cities and people was most definitely not fake. The image of a little girl's doll burning in the street was quite poignant. Possibly the most exciting part of the entire movie was at the very end, when Smaug lifted his face out of the massive pile of treasure and opened his eye. That eye was, without a doubt, the most amazing eyeball I've ever seen. I only caught a short glimpse of it, but from what I remember, it was orange and similar in shape to that of a cat's, but with an incredible depth to it that made me think that a dragon stare really could be paralyzing to the weak-minded. To put it simply, this is not a dragon that you'd want to mess with, assuming that you wanted to mess with the dragon to begin with. From the little I've seen, I think it's safe to say that Smaug will be the most spectacular dragon to ever grace the movie screen. The troll scene was hilarious. Bilbo turned out to be pretty smart in a pinch. I can't say the same for some of those dwarves, though. I love the part where Bilbo says, they're infected with worms, and of course, the dwarves start saying, I don't have worms, I don't have worms. Then Thorin kicks them, and then they change their minds to, I have worms, I have even bigger worms, I have the biggest worms. Of course, the Cockney accents used by the trolls Tom, Bert, and Will were spot on, and the animation for the trolls was great. The battle between the trolls and the dwarves was really well choreographed. I loved how the dwarves worked so well together. For instance, they were jumping off of each other to perform aerial slashes. The entire scene was so great that I'm willing to forgive them, the filmmakers, for the one weird snot part. I like the new design for the wargs much better than those in the Two Towers. In this movie, they looked a lot more like wolves rather than hyenas. The entire sequence of the company getting trapped in the trees was played out better in the movie than in the book, in my opinion. In the movie, the setting on the edge of a cliff was a lot more dramatic and perilous than the random forest in the book. It also set up the subsequent save by the eagles in a great way. The eagles looked much better here than in The Return of the Kings. Did you notice, actually, that they dropped off the company on top of the Carrack, and that the Carrack is shaped like a standing bear? Thorin attacking Azog was, of course, not in the book, but it worked well in the movie. It showed the extent of Thorin's hate for the man, or rather orc, who killed his grandfather. Of course, it also set up Bilbo's first real act of heroism to make Thorin realize that maybe there is more to this hobbit than meets the eye. At the beginning, when Thorin arrives in Bag End, he's seemingly indifferent to Bilbo's presence. However, as they continue on their journey, and especially while they're traversing the Misty Mountains, Thorin becomes positively hostile to Bilbo. However, Bilbo is able to prove him wrong near the end when he saves Thorin from Azog. I will admit, I kind of teared up a bit at the "Have you hugged a hobbit today" moment. It really helped set up the tone for the next movie, and I'm excited to see how the dynamic between Thorin and Bilbo evolves over the course of the story. The ring. Yes, that ring was perfect. I love the way in which the ring first landed on Bilbo's finger when he was trying to escape from Gollum. It was exactly as the ring did for Frodo when he was in the Prancing Pony Inn in the Fellowship of the Ring. There were several other little parallels between the Fellowship of the Ring and the Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey. For instance, in the beginning of an Unexpected Journey, Bilbo peers out of his window and jumps back in shock when he sees Gandalf's eye appear in the window. In the beginning of the Fellowship of the Rings, an older Bilbo does the exact same thing when he sees the Sackville Bagginses appear at his window. Another similarity is how Gandalf communicates with the Eagles, with the moth in both movies. There are several other stuff like this that are common between the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit. There are so many more things I loved about this movie, especially little details that they incorporated from the book. For instance, near the end, there's the thrush pounding snail shells against the side of the lonely mountain. Then there's a troll speaking in Cockney accents, Bilbo jumping over Gollum to escape the goblin tunnels, Bilbo losing his brass buttons from his waistcoat. All of this goes to show that, despite the differences from the book, Peter Jackson and his crew really do understand the spirit of the book, and they were able to translate this effectively into the movie. I, for one, cannot wait till December of next year for The Hobbit: The Desolation of Smaug to come out, and then for The Hobbit: There and Back Again to be released in summer 2014. What did you think about the movie? Reply with your reviews in either comments or response videos. Or better yet, you can follow my Hobbit fan page on Google Plus called The Hobbit Movies, link below, and add your own reviews to our community page. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, you can follow me on Google Plus at plus.ly/DanielJames, or just click the link below. Thanks.